Hi there, Nicci Fletcher for the We Are Worthy Summit. And I had to pause for a second because I'm feeling tired, and the number of times I've made the terrible mistake of saying we are not worthy. However, I think that really indicates how the feeling of unworthiness sits inside us. And that's one of the reasons for doing the summit. And today I am talking to a lady called Sue Johnston. And I met, in inverted commas, Sue a couple of years ago now on Twitter when I was asking people if they wanted to do a guest blog for the blog I was running at the time. And she said, oh yes, I've written a book and perhaps I could write something for you. So that's how we met a couple of years ago. And we've sort of kept in touch over the last 2 years. And when she heard that I was organising the We Are Worthy Summit, she said, oh, Nicci, can I have some information? Because it sounds really interesting. And this is the result of it. So, hi, Sue.
Well, hi, Nicci. How are you? And thank you so much for having me today.
It's a pleasure. I'm very, very well, thank you. I hope you are too. So I thought before we started properly, we should just give the listeners, give the viewers a little bit of an insight about our journey and how we've come to be where we are, and then we'll go into the actual topic of this discussion, which is all about peer-led support. So how does that sound to you?
Sounds wonderful, Nicci. I'm all on board for this.
Good, excellent. So, just so you get an idea of what I'm talking about, if I go first, which is very rude of me, I'm afraid, but I thought it would give you an insight into what I'm looking for. Okay. So, if people don't know me, I'm Nicci Fletcher. I'm married to Andrew. We met quite late on in life because we've both been married before. We met when I was in my mid-30s. We got married. We'd had a miscarriage because I became pregnant fairly early on in our relationship due to a split condom, had a miscarriage, and then we were sort of lulled into this false sense of security that basically my eggs only had to smell sperm and I would fall pregnant. So, we thought it was all going to be very easy. And about 6 months after we got married, nothing had happened. I went to my GP, and for a number of reasons, they started to do tests immediately. I was diagnosed initially with unexplained infertility, and basically we were just told to go away and have lots of sex, enjoy it, and hopefully one day. And that's how it was for a few years. And then I woke up on my 40th birthday, screaming agony, and it was a problem with my left ovary caused by endometriosis. I had a couple of surgeries for endometriosis, and Andrew and I had one cycle of IVF, which we funded ourselves, and we didn't even get to the 2-week wait stage because none of my 8 eggs fertilized. And we were basically told, because of your endometriosis, your egg reserves, the medication you were on for the IVF, basically it's going to have to be donor eggs or nothing. And that's where we were until a few years ago. Crawled under a stone, pulled the stone back over on the top of us, and didn't want to engage in anything at all. We were in the depths of depression, and we've started to come out of that. And running the magazine that we do, and now running this summit, is something which is really helping us, because we find that helping other people in our own situation is actually very healing for us, and it's making us have a sense of purpose. So that's a little tiny bit about me. Over to you, Sue.
Well, my journey is long, and I'm older than most people, I would say, because I just turned 60 in January. But I look at my life and I think about my trying to conceive journey and trying to build a family journey is the most difficult thing I've ever been through in my 6 decades of life. And when I was a young girl, I was the youngest of 4 children. I wanted to, in the worst way, to have a baby brother or sister. My mother and father told me that when I grew up, I could have as many children as I want. And I decided at that point that I was going to be an elementary school teacher because I thought that I would be able to fill my world with a class full of children. And Then when I met my husband, who was a naval officer, and he was stationed at the Pentagon, I was teaching elementary school, and we started trying to have our own family, and my mother's words rung in my head about you can have as many children as you want, and that just wasn't true for me. No matter what we would try, I just couldn't get pregnant. I went to a reproductive endocrinologist at about a year of trying to conceive, and everything looked picture perfect for me. They said I had lots and lots of eggs, lots and lots of sperm. Everything looked wonderful, but we just couldn't seem to get pregnant no matter what we did. And so in the meanwhile, my husband got orders to the Philippines, and we were plucked out of my infertility treatment. And I really would say that was the lowest part of my journey. We had to go overseas for 2.5 years, and I knew that there wasn't any, quality plan of care for me in my infertility. So I did do some things, but you'll have to read about that in the book. That's a little teaser. I wrote a book, and you'll have to read all about Jungle General was the name of the hospital that I was trying to, pursue treatment in when I was over there. All kidding aside, that was the name of the hospital. Then when I returned to the United States, I was really ready to hit the infertility with the big guns. I wanted to go to IVF, and that is when I started my association with Resolve, the National Infertility Support Association here in the United States. We were stationed in San Diego, and I joined Resolve of San Diego, and I had, over the course of my treatment, I had over 40 embryos transferred in different IVFs, like 6 altogether. It was crazy expensive and just the worst. One of those stuck. So I have one son now who is 24 years old. And I feel that I am really compelled to share I didn't want to close my door on my infertility journey, because I felt like there are so many people that I could be a help for those who I could take an adverse time in my life and make something positive come of it. So I've been a partner with Resolve. I'm a mentor with Resolve. I started my own peer-led support group after I went to Washington, D.C., and found out that my own state was rated a D for fertility support. And I felt like I needed to do something rather than just write a book. I needed to be that person in the community that could provide help and support for those on their journey. And one of the things that I think resonated the most with me when I met Nicci was that in my book, my book is called Detours, Unexpected Journeys of Hope, Conceived from Infertility. And one of the chapters that I think that is the most appreciated, I would say is the right word, is the chapter from a woman who ended up childless, not by choice. And I just think that I have a lot, because when people are trying to conceive, they don't really know what their outcome is going to be. And many of those people could end up childless, not by choice. So I feel that having met this woman who, through Resolve in San Diego, I can offer people a lot of help who end up childless, not by choice. So that's why we really wanted to connect with Nicci on this summit.
Which is absolutely brilliant. And thank you so much for going through that. So I do have to apologise if any of you could hear the dogs barking in the background then. Andrew's trying to keep them as quiet as possible. But one of the things that I really love and admire about you, Sue, is that you are one of the few people I know who went through infertility struggles and had their wonderful outcome of having a baby, and yet didn't almost close down all the shutters other people that I've come across, and I've heard this quite a few times from people that I know, they sort of feel that as soon as that pregnancy happens, that people want to sort of shy away from people who are still struggling, because they don't want to be reminded of all the pain. Right. So one thing I did want to say is thank you so much for doing what you do, because so many people in your situation would just go, that's a chapter of my story that I no longer want to be reminded of.
Right, right.
So
it is terribly painful, but I feel that I wrote a blog post called Turning Pain into Purpose. And I feel that, my mother, the one that, she told me that I could have as many babies as I want. She also told me that I could live a purposeful life, and that resonates with me. I can't just close the door on that. So thank you for recognizing that. I feel that it's important to use our pain to help other people.
Yeah, which is one of the reasons why I do the magazine and why we're running the summit. So we're totally in agreement about that.
Now my dog is barking. I don't know if
Yes, I did mention it and smile. Oh, sorry, I did register it and smile. That's great, Sue. So now hopefully people have got a bit of an idea about my background and your background and how we met and why we're doing this. And what I want to do now is start to think about the actual topic of this discussion, which is peer-led support groups. So we're specifically talking about the physical ones, so not the ones which are on Facebook. So this is something, a group that you physically go to and meet people face to face. Just before we start, what do you actually mean by peer-led support?
Well, peer-led support means that we are not professionals. We are not we are not nurses. We are not clinical psychologists. We are just peers. We have walked in those shoes, and we work under the auspices of Resolve. So Resolve has some things that we need to make sure that we do, how we lead our group. We have a little booklet that we can read through. You don't have to have any experience. You can just volunteer to help. You can be actively trying to build your family, or in my case, I've reached my resolution, and anybody can be a peer-led support.
Yeah. Excellent. And why do you think these groups are so important? And what do they bring, the physical ones? What benefits are there over the online ones, do you think?
Right. I think that's an excellent question. And I feel that I've given some thought to that question. And number one, I feel like people are hardwired to connect with other human beings. I think it's really important to our beings, being human, is that we need to talk to and relate to people on a physical level. I think that when a person is going through such a difficult time in their lives, they need to feel that they are not so alone. Yeah. I think it helps them to not feel isolated. I think that peers are very knowledgeable. They have done a lot of research. They're very motivated to try to figure out how to feel better themselves. So peer-led support groups are invaluable for educating ourselves. They provide a lot of hope, because you might see somebody else that's farther along in their journey than you are, and you can learn something about that and think, well, okay, if they perhaps may be getting themselves out of this situation or at a better place, then maybe that could be me too. Yeah. I feel that the affordability part, most of them are free. Many of us are trying to, you don't have to pay a therapist exorbitant amounts of money to just talk for an hour. You can just relate to your peers. You can call each other in between. We can do physical things in the group. Like, there's nothing like a hug, a warm hug, or somebody wiping away your tears, or Just there's so many deep and meaningful aspects to peer-led support. I could probably come up with a lot more, but those are the ones I'm thinking of off the top of my head.
Yes. And I was sitting here nodding my head, and it wasn't just a sort of an interview's nod of the head in agreement. It was yes, yeah, I can totally relate to that. It's certainly in terms of the isolation. And things like that. Just trying to remember what else I was nodding my head to. Oh yes, you were saying about the fact that you can relate to people who have been there, done that, etc. And I think one of the advantages of peer-led support is the fact that if there is somebody in the group who is further along their journey of acceptance, and things like that, it's still attainable to other people. I equate it to if I was going along to a local gym to book an exercise class, and I saw somebody who was had got the physique and stamina and fitness of somebody like Usain Bolt or Paula yes, it is Paula Radcliffe, isn't it? Or Mo Farah, some of the Olympians. If I sort of saw somebody like that as the instructor, I would probably not go for that class. I would go for a class run by somebody who was not as fit, not as strong, perhaps not have such amount of kudos, etc., and such success, because I could look at those people and think, yeah, you're definitely fitter and healthier than I am. However, you're not sort of so far above in that level of fitness that I actually can't even imagine getting halfway there.
Right.
So I think having people who are 2, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead, shining a light back to you, is much. I think there's much more power in that, I think, than somebody who's sort of 5 miles ahead in their progress.
Yeah, I think that peer-led groups are less intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
I think people were more relatable. I think you don't have to have you're not as nervous when you know somebody else is in the same situation. Yeah. You're just, like I said, more relatable, mm-hmm. and more genuine, and you get it. You get it. I mean, if you're going to a professional or somebody who's so far ahead of you that you might just feel like they can't relate to you, they don't understand. It's just...
Yeah, most definitely. And you were saying about the fact that humans, by nature, we want to congregate with people. We want to feel connected with a community. It's why people go to book clubs. It's why they go to art classes. It's why they go to, if you're religious, it's why you go to Bible study and church and things, because you want to be amongst other people who have got the same interests. Although this isn't an interest, it's it's a situation that we need help finding our way through. But we are social creatures, and being with other people who have experienced something similar, there's such a lot of comfort in that.
Right. And I also think that one other thing that popped into my head is that I feel that when you're among your peers, your antennas are up, and you can even learn something about yourself. You become self-reflective, and you think, okay, well, when you're listening to that person share their journey, there might be some little spark of, oh, aha, that could work for me too. And so there's a level of self-understanding that goes along with support groups as well.
Yeah. So, and I think sometimes that is particularly true if you are in denial about anything.
Right.
as well. It's easier to see it in somebody else and then go, oh, actually. And that's certainly how I know that it was on Facebook, but that's how I started actually my healing, my own healing process, because I had joined a Facebook support group, not because I wanted to or needed to join the support group, but because it had been organised, it was being started by somebody I knew, and I wanted to give her support in her new venture.
Exactly.
So I said, we'd go on, and I'd like the odd post just to increase the activity within the group. And then I started to read some of these, the actual comments, rather than just pressing like here and there. And I started to think, oh, actually, hang on a minute. Yeah, this, I can understand what that person is saying. And then I started to actually properly comment. And then I started to write my own posts as well. So yes, I think it can trigger all sorts of healing that you perhaps didn't even know that you needed.
Exactly.
Because of that.
I think that one of the gals in my support group, without mentioning any names, she is learning to find her voice with her family.
Yeah.
Her family is not very understanding, and when she hears other people in a similar situation talking about their situations, I think that shared strife and adversity can help people find themselves and be able to talk to others and feel a little bit more comfortable. They find useful tools and ways to communicate and ways to feel that they fit in, and help them build their relationships with people who don't get it.
Yes.
And I think that's what we all want, is to not feel so isolated.
Yeah.
Feel,
Definitely, I think it works in both senses of it. It's the feeling saddened that somebody else is going through the same situation, and they've got family and friends who aren't very supportive. Is very sad, and yet it gives some form of comfort in the fact that okay, it's not just me. It's not just that my family don't love and support me, and there's some comfort in knowing that, even though you feel a bit guilty about that because it's somebody else who's going through a terrible time as well. But there's also okay, well, how would you deal with this in an ideal world? And you've got like a safe environment in which to discuss how, if somebody does something which is insensitive, how would you deal with it? And you can explore these things in a safe environment with people who get it. And then if it happens again and you're feeling strong enough, you've got an idea about how you can deal with it in reality when it happens the next time.
Exactly. And another aspect, I feel that in-person support groups can lend itself to humor. And we're not always, crying or despondent. We can, whoops, sorry about that one. Don't know if you need to pause or not.
So Sue, just before the phone rang, we were starting to talk about humour within your the groups, the physical groups.
Right. And I feel that humor can really, it can lessen the intensity and the anxiety and fears, and people can laugh through some situations, and there's a collective sense of humor, or we can say something that somebody else, in the outside, we have these inside jokes and whatnot, and it just lifts your spirits. It's good for our endorphins. It makes us feel good. It makes us feel lighter. And I feel that in a virtual group, you can't hear that laughter. It can be contagious when you're sitting around the table, sharing, a story about this or a story about that. So I think it's, definitely a benefit of our group.
It is a benefit, yeah. And I suppose the other thing is that if you're talking about a physical group, when there are probably 5 to 10 people in the room.
Exactly.
If somebody feels upset, you can deal with it, and you can deal with it, in a very tangible way. Whereas, I think probably people might be a bit worried about posting something which is humorous in, a support group online, which has got 500-600 people in it, because it's a much bigger group, and somebody could be feeling very vulnerable and not be able to deal with whatever's been said, but because they're behind a computer screen, you may never find out about that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yes, I think that's a very, very important distinction to make between the two types of groups. So, how long have you been running your support group, then, Sue?
Believe it or not, only a year.
Okay.
Year. I have been a part of Resolve for close to 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on the receiving end of support when I was going through my journey, and
Mm-hmm.
I've been a member of Resolve for all of these years and supported and contributed. And that's the reason the Resolve was my lifeline, and it is what I think helped me get to the other side and come out, okay. So I've been a participant, but I have not been a leader until my book came out. I launched Detours, Unexpected Journeys of Hope, Conceived from Infertility, last year, March. It was right before National Infertility Awareness Week.
Yes.
For National Advocacy Awareness in Washington, D.C. And I thought, I can't just write a book. I need to be the person in the community. So when I went to Washington, D.C., I discovered that we are rated in our states here. And I found out that Michigan, where my home state, was rated a D for fertility support. And I was just shocked. I really didn't know that before. So I signed up right then and there. I said, I'm going to start my support group. So it'll be a year in May. And I started my peer-led support group.
Yeah, and it's wonderful. I think quite a lot of people do a similar sort of thing in so many other ways. They see something which is missing or lacking, and instead of grumbling about it and doing nothing, they become the change they want to see in the world.
Exactly.
And I think that's the catalyst for quite a lot of people.
Right. Yeah. And if I didn't go to Advocacy Day, I wouldn't have realized that Michigan didn't have the support. So I think that was the thing I took out of Advocacy Day, was that I needed to do more.
Yeah.
And that's what started my group here in my hometown. And it's spider webbing out. So I'm excited. I'm able to start a new one in Lansing, Michigan, and one in Flint, Michigan. And we're going to bring that letter D up to at least a B, maybe.
Yeah, which is wonderful. It's wonderful. So it's obviously in that year, the group has already started to grow, which is brilliant. And the word is starting to spread. And have you done anything, really proactive to help spread awareness about the group?
Oh, definitely. I contacted all the reproductive endocrinologists in our neck of the woods in Southeast Michigan. I have created flyers and posted them up around town. I have created a Facebook group and had everybody invite their friends. I have contacted local radio stations and newspapers, and I've been putting together. You can look at all of this on my website, but I have all kinds of resources that can help me spread the word.
Yeah. And do you really get the sense that all of that work that you've done is paying off in the fact that more people are joining the group and there's more awareness around now?
Yes, definitely. Considering that my group is just shy of a year, we're 11 months old. I started with 1, and now I have 9. And
okay.
I'm starting 2 more, support groups in areas where it's just a little too far for them to travel. So I'm going to go help them get started, and we have these spin-off groups. So I think there's a lot of progress from no group in my area, 1 person, all the way to 9. It's like adding a new member every month. And
I was about to say it's about an average of 1 a month, isn't it? Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Which is, I think that's really impressive, because it's so hard when you start. And the other thing I found, because I haven't run a support group for the CNBC community, but what I have done in the past is start a business networking group. And that was so difficult to get off the ground. And even though I had I had a mailing list of perhaps 30 people who would be interested, are receiving the emails to say, we're meeting here, next week at such and such a time. I think the most people I ever had physically coming to the group was 12 people, and that happened once.
Yes.
Every other time it was just sort of 2 or 3 people coming. And it's so difficult to know how to sort of improve that as well, and how to reach people. And over here it's very rural, and there's very little support for businesses and things. So and quite a lot of people run their own business here. So I thought that I might be inundated with people wanting to join, and it wasn't. A few people said yes, I'll join, and then never actually came to a meeting. So it's very difficult to know actually how to spread the word in a way that encourages people to join in.
Right. I think that there's a lot of truth to that, and I think that I went with the knowledge, with the feeling that if I could just help one person, and one person better than none. So I just thought, well, we'll see how this unfolds. I try to be patient. I know that Rome isn't built in a day, part of the day, but I know that it takes time and energy and word of mouth, and people have to, be willing to embrace walking through that door the first time. That door can feel really heavy at first. And,
it's definitely got to be the right time for somebody to come along. Right. Particularly that first time, and it can't be pushed at all.
Yes, I also started a blog, and a year ago I started blogging, and I think the word is getting out about the benefits of peer-led support groups, and people are sharing blogs, and once people can digest and realize that, hey, maybe this is a good place for me, then I think they might be willing to join in. And once they get there, they're like, wish I would have started this, years ago.
Yeah, that's right. It's so difficult. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you today for the summit is that there might be people out there listening to this who are thinking, actually, I really like the idea of starting my own group. Because similar sort of situation to Sue, in the fact that there's not much here. We like the idea of something which is a physical group rather than an online group, so that they can complement each other. And they might be thinking, do I have what it takes to run a group? So what would you say are some of the characteristics, if you like? What makes a good group leader?
That's an excellent question. I feel that the first thing you have to have is compassion, and your willingness to help other people. And I feel that you need to be an active listener and let people share their stories, let them share what's on their hearts. I think that sometimes, like you're doing right now, you have to nod and just listen, and maybe perhaps ask leading questions. I think a support group is a place where the leader should not be judging or asking or saying, well, you should do this or you should do that, because as soon as you insert the word you should, then that makes them feel a little defensive. You need to ask those leading questions, and you also need to be able to give everybody a bit of time. So somebody might want to monopolize the whole group, and their story is so compelling that everybody might want to hear, but that won't give somebody who is really eager to share an opportunity. I think it's important that a person who is in the group who may be a little more reserved, a little shy, important to try to get them to come out by asking things like, is there something that this, sparks in you? Do you feel like you could have something that you would like to share, and give that person an opportunity as well?
And sometimes that can be very, very difficult. I hate interrupting people.
Right.
I hate people. I hate it when people interrupt me, and I don't like interrupting other people. And one of the things that I have had to come to terms with, and to learn, if you like, when doing the interviews for the magazine, is that at some stage I have to start talking over somebody, because otherwise they might have gone off on a track, on a they've been distracted, they've gone off message, if you like, and they need to be brought back to focus about what the question is. Or the fact that they've been talking for 10 minutes and I've been sitting here just nodding my head, and I've not been able to get a word in edgeways. Okay, so Sue, I imagine that there are going to be some people who are watching this, and they may be thinking, I wouldn't mind actually giving this a go, but I don't know if I've got what it takes to be a group leader. So what do you think are some of the characteristics or the skills that a group leader needs to have?
Very good. Well, Nicci, I think the first and foremost is that you need to be a compassionate person, someone who likes to help other people. And I think that once your group gets established, you need to make sure that you're an active listener, that you don't interrupt people, that you can let them talk freely. I think it's important for you to develop a place where they feel safe and not judged. I think that a group leader should not be using the should word by saying you should do this or you should do that. It's an important thing to say, maybe perhaps you may want to think about, or what are your feelings about, rather than giving them advice that they should do. I think it's important to be a time monitor and know when to help a person wrap up their thoughts and move on to the next person, so that everybody gets an opportunity to share. I think a person who could be holding back in the group, it's important to be able to draw them out a bit by leading questions that might ask them to think about something they're thinking or feeling if they want to share. I think it's important to have varied program, so that it's not boring and that it's interesting. And I think it's important to bring information to the group about upcoming events, so that you're knowledgeable about what's going on that would affect them and that they may want to participate in. Those are some of the things I can think of off the top of my head. I think you need to be organized. You have to find a place where it's convenient for people. Just the logistics of finding a place. I think it's important to have a place that's free. So it's easily access, a place to park. So I contacted my local library because they can't charge us for the room. I think it's respectful to make sure that you're getting a time when it's the best for the majority of people. Not going to get everybody, but a time and location that's easy to make it happen for everybody. So those are some of the things that I'm thinking of off the top of my head.
And that's given us a lot to think about, which is really good. And I think location is quite a difficult one. When I was doing my networking group, we actually started off by meeting in cafes, and I would go ahead and sort of, I'd talk to the cafe owner and I'd explain what we were doing, and it's a case of everybody comes and they buy something, a coffee, perhaps a pastry of some sort, so that we are not taking up the space without giving anything back to the cafe. And so we did that for quite some time, and it worked very well. And yet, what eventually happened was people just treated it as, oh, I'm going to have a cup of coffee with friends. So we weren't actually doing any of the bits and pieces about the business side of things. How do you run a business? What the business challenges are? So we ended up changing where we went. So I think it's I think sometimes it takes a bit of time to find the right place. And also, I think it's important not to be scared to make some changes. If it's not working quite the way that you hoped it would work, and everybody's in agreement, then try something different as well.
Exactly.
You know. And also, I think the active listening is important. Get used to asking open questions. So, how do you feel about what would you do in this situation? Very, very important advice about keep the should out of it. So, no, you should do this. Quite often what I do is I explain what I've done in the past. And that's it's not wanting to sort of take the focus away from the person I'm trying to help, but it will be a case of me saying, I wonder if sharing what I've done in the past might help you. Would you be happy for me to do that? So I get their permission first of all. I then share a little tiny bit, and then we can say, okay, your situation is different. How can we use what I've done to perhaps find something that would work for you? Yeah, so that's another way of doing that. I've got a beep going on. I've got no idea what is beeping. I do apologise for that happening. I hope it's not too distracting. So yes, there are all of those sorts of things. And I think you said about managing time and sort of managing the group, because I imagine what can happen quite easily is that you've got somebody who is perhaps a little tiny bit more vocal in being able to speak out. And it could mean that people who are quieter and want to share don't get that opportunity, or they don't feel that they can. So I think that's a sign of a good leader as well, is being able to encourage those people to talk and to share without intimidating or upsetting the person who has been a bit more talkative. And that's a fine balance, a difficult balance sometimes to get.
Definitely.
So sometimes I get a strange answer from this one, so I ask it now with a bit of trepidation. But if you knew before you started your group what you know now, what would you do differently?
Well, I think that the first thing that comes to the forefront of my mind is that I feel like I could have done this a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to have been able to start this, when I first moved to the community. So I wish my antenna was up more and I could have started earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But aside from starting earlier, what would I do differently? I think I would have talked to more professionals, like gone to my clergy and told them, because I feel like somebody in the ministry might be dealing with someone who is struggling,
Mm-hmm.
acceptance or their resolution. And if they know about me, I think more awareness about what I was doing would probably help the growth a little bit sooner. Does that make sense?
It does. And as I say, I always ask the question now with a bit of trepidation, because I actually really struggle when people say the benefits of hindsight. And it's a case of, no, you do what's right at the time. But thinking that somebody might be listening to this who is seriously considering starting a group, I wanted to bring that up. So, perhaps take the plunge a little tiny bit earlier, even though you may not feel totally ready for it.
Exactly. I feel that, things need to unfold, and it's better to do something than nothing. It's a learning experience together, and you're on a journey together, and nothing is set in stone, and just do it. because it's going to be well received, even if it's just for one person at first, and then it will grow from there.
Yeah.
So.
That's right. And I think the other thing is, because the nature of what type of group we're talking about, if you do something and it doesn't quite work, it's, as you say, it's going to be well received. Nobody's going to be criticising you for it. And everybody in the group is going to be wanting you to succeed.
Right.
As well. Yeah. And I think that's important. So, I suppose that's really the best advice that we could give to anybody who's thinking about this is, give it a go. Everybody's going to be supportive. They're going to want you to succeed, and you can always make changes and tweak things as you go along if need be.
Exactly.
So now, you were talking earlier about sort of one of the benefits of peer-led support is that it's free because you're not paying to go and talking to a counsellor and things like that. But I'm wondering about the actual structure of your meetings. Do you have any sort of formal structure, or is it just sort of this is when we're meeting, we'll see what happens?
No, I believe that I like to approach it with a two-pronged approach. Mm-hmm. The first part of my meetings are generally informative, something that I've learned or something I want to share, whether it be a video, could be perhaps this recording.
Yeah.
That I could use as a tool to help somebody who is in a different city learn how to start a peer-led support group. Mm-hmm. It could be an actual person. I've had a gal that came in and she was doing some yoga in our group, and she is now starting a fertile yoga group. You could do art as a form of therapy. I've had artists and share with us how to express yourself and put that on paper and help us with an activity that it could be very healing. Mm-hmm. It could be a professional, a medical professional, or a clinical psychologist, or somebody that. So I feel like my job is to bring some information to the group in some capacity at the beginning of the meeting, and we'll see. Usually that lasts a half an hour. Maybe if it's really taking off and we're doing an activity, it could be a full hour. Yeah. And then we break. We have about a 5-10 minute bathroom break, and then we come back, and that's when we get into. Seems to be the most important part to people, the part they love the most. But we do the sharing part, and everybody gets to share what's on their heart, where they are in the journey, where they are, with their acceptance, and then that's when I have to monitor and make sure everybody gets a chance to talk.
Yes, yeah. That's it. Yeah. Sorry about that little break there. So just before I started to cough, you were talking about sometimes you invite people in to lead a session at that first part when you were talking about sort of the self-care and the nurturing. So I was just wondering how you sort of approach them and what sort of arrangement you have if you were perhaps asking somebody to lead a yoga session or an art therapy session. How does that work, Sue?
Well, typically I know the person personally. My yoga instructor, I was talking to her about, the benefits of yoga and self-care, and I thought perhaps maybe she might like to come in and meet the members of my support group, and we went to coffee. I just sat down and had coffee with her, and I asked her if she would be interested, and she said, oh, she would love to help. And I said, well, we run under the auspices of Resolve, and we can't charge people. So I wanted to make sure that she understood up front that this would be something that would be a complimentary, that we can't. And that perhaps if she were to come in and meet my support group members, that she might get a new client or be able to start a deeper, meaningful relationship, or something with somebody else outside of that particular. So, and everybody seems to be very open to that. If they don't want to, then we can just,
Yeah, that's fine, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think you're right. A lot of people are open to it. I mean, I've been totally overwhelmed by the number of people who said, yes, I'll love to do a session for the summit. In fact, some people are doing 2 or 3 sessions. It's amazing what they're providing, and there's no charge. They're not getting any money from it. However, it's helping them to spread the word, and if something other comes from it, then that's the icing on the cake, isn't it? The initial bit, so you're actually helping people. And I think it's very important right at the start to sort of explain that we can't pay you for your session, and be upfront about it, and then people can either say yes, I'd like to help, or actually no, I can't, and that's absolutely fine. So we've covered an awful lot today, Sue. So just to wind up, is there anything else that you'd like to share?
Well, I would love to be able to help the CNBC community get their voice heard, and if I could have anyone out there that would like to be a guest blogger on my blog, I would love to share your story to help you in your, build awareness, build compassion, build, acceptance, and make you feel and make you understand that you definitely are worthy. So yeah, I would love to have you sign up for my blog. I would love to have you connect with me on Facebook, in my Facebook group. However, I can be there to help you with your mission and your message. So that would be what I would like to leave this group with. That I would love to be there for you.
That is so kind of you, Sue, and certainly over the weekend I'm going to be writing a little tiny bit of a blog for you to take you up on your kind offer, and I also know at least one person that I've mentioned that offer to, because you had mentioned it to me earlier. I know one person who's already come back and said, yeah, I'd love to do that. So I know that there are going to be other people who come and say, oh, hello, Sue, I'd like to do this. Thank you very much for the opportunity. So thank you for that. And now you've mentioned your blog, but we haven't mentioned the domain name, so your URL. How can people find out more about you and get in contact with you?
You can get in contact with me by finding theinfertilityadvocate.com. And I chose the Infertility Advocate as my name because I feel that fertility I have a dash in there between in and fertility. Fertility means all things, and I explain this in my website, that grow in you, of you, and through you. And I just feel that it doesn't necessarily mean that the resolution that is not within your reach.
Yeah.
So find me in the dash is very important because I'm wishing all good things to grow in you, of you, and through you. So fertilityadvocate.com. You can find me at my blog on there. You can find my resources. You can connect with me, my website, my email, everything is on there. So yeah.
That's wonderful.
On there. I have my book, can't forget to mention my book.
No.
First, Unexpected Journeys of Hope, Conceived from Infertility. And the good thing about my book is that I'm going to start another one. So if there's anybody that would like to learn a little bit more, perhaps be, a chapter in my next anthology. If you wanted to, connect with me about that, I'm starting to gather new stories for my next anthology.
That's wonderful, and that's so good to know, and I'm sure that you will get some people getting in contact with you about that as well. And there will be there'll be a slide and a link to your website and things like that, so people can find you very easily. So, despite all of telephones ringing, dogs barking, and coughing fits, we've managed to get to the end of this discussion. So, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to you. It's been absolutely fascinating, and I hope that it inspires and encourages some other people to start peer-led support groups, which are physical, out there in the real world, because I really do think that there's a need for both types of support. The online support is absolutely fantastic and very accessible. However, there's nothing quite like meeting somebody in person and having a hug if that's what you need, and also sharing a laugh as well when appropriate and if that helps. So thank you very much for taking the time to speak to me today.
My pleasure, Nicci. Thank you so much for all you're doing for everyone out there. God bless you. Wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, Sue. Take care. Bye.